At about 11:30 in the morning on the southwestern coast of Chile, 7.6 magnitude quake, possibly just deep enough to absorb all of the energy. Ironically, this has occurred in an area, good news that it's sparsely populated, but on a rupture that gave us the world's largest earthquake in 1960 at a magnitude 9.5. So there is some damage that we're getting reports. About 41,000 felt very strong shaking, but nothing in the severe category. Authorities there are saying no fatalities, and that's what the USGS is telling us. We love it when it's green. That means a low impact. But, Michael, there was some damage. And, of course, we're going to continue to see those damage assessments come in, and we'll pass all that information. Of course, what they do right away, line up for petrol.
Reports of damages are only starting to trickle in now, and in large part because this typhoon hit the central region of the Philippines in the dark, and so it was traversing that region literally in the dark. And I say literally because power was out for most areas of that region. It's still out in some areas. Cell signal is still spotty, so it is quite difficult at this point to get a full picture of the extent of the damage. We have seen local media reports as well as posts on social media about just how strong the winds were in the first few hours it hit the Philippines. People were saying the winds were pounding on their windows, that trees got uprooted, that tin roofs and signages were blown off. And so this was a strong typhoon, a Category 4 typhoon when it hit the Philippines. Now it has been downgraded to a Category 3. Still a strong typhoon though, and so we can expect people to still be in evacuation centers at least in the next 24 hours. So far though, no reports of deaths. Christmas is a big holiday here in the Philippines. It is peak travel season, and so with flights and sea travel grounded, I think you can imagine the scenario. Thousands of passengers are now stranded in various ports in the Philippines. In fact, they've had to spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in those ports. Some of them were even transferred to evacuation centers. Local governments that are handling those ports even had to ask additional assistance from the national government for food for those passengers. Local governments had evacuated or tried to evacuate people on Christmas Eve and on Christmas Day. Of course, people hesitated to evacuate, and so what the local governments had to do was to impose forced evacuation measures. And one governor even brought in roast pigs to evacuation centers just to entice people to leave their homes.
Turkey has called on members of the United States-led coalition fighting Islamic State to assist in air support to Turkey-backed troops laying siege in the ISIL-held northern Syrian town of al-Bab. Rebels supported by Turkish troops are battling ISIL in the Euphrates Shield operation launched almost 4 months ago. The operation aims to sweep the Sunni hardliners and Kurdish fighters from Turkey's border with Syria. Turkish officials confirmed that a total of 226 ISIL militants had been neutralized in latest operations around Al-Bab, with intense diplomatic efforts underway to establish a ceasefire across Syria.
The Turkish Interior Ministry says that its forces have arrested nearly 1,700 people over alleged relations with terrorist organizations last week. Of the figure, 516 were detained for further questioning. Almost two-thirds of the arrested people are accused of having links with the self-exiled cleric Fethullah Gulen. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan accuses Gulen of orchestrating the failed mid-July coup. About a third of the detainees were questioned for links with the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, and only 12 were thrown behind bars on Daesh-related terrorism charges. Also on Monday, Turkish security forces took away a lawmaker from the pro-Kurdish party HDP in Ankara. Aysel Tugluk's arrest brings to 14 the number of opposition MPs detained since last month.
China is firmly against sanctioning the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act for next year on high-level military exchanges with Taiwan. China has already lodged stern representations and strong dissatisfaction with the act. Although the Taiwan content is not legally binding, it interferes with our internal affairs and infringes on China's sovereignty. It is completely unacceptable. China urges Washington to keep its promise to China that stop military communication and arms sales to Taiwan.
Well, it is worth pointing out that this is the very first time that the U.S.'s National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal 2017 includes a section on senior military exchanges with Taiwan. Specifically, the act states it is the sense of Congress that the Secretary of Defense should conduct such a program. If implemented, the program will take place both in Taiwan and the U.S.
Abe is the first sitting Japanese leader to visit the USS Arizona Memorial and pay tribute to the victims of the bombing raid, which saw more than 2,000 military personnel killed. Abe said on Monday that he wants to send a message to the world during his visit that Japan will never repeat the atrocities of the past.
Democratic Republic of Congo, at least 34 civilians have been killed in what's been described as a massacre. The attack happened in the northeastern town of Eringeti. It follows a wave of attacks that are reported to have claimed the lives of more than 700 people in the last 2 years. An official has blamed this attack on Ugandan rebels, but some experts say the Congolese army may have been involved.
Well, Israeli media say that Tel Aviv plans to build thousands of settler units in Jerusalem al-Quds. According to an Israeli newspaper, an Israeli committee is scheduled to convene on Wednesday to approve the construction of 5,600 settler units in East Jerusalem al-Quds. The deputy mayor of Jerusalem al-Quds, Mayor Turjuman, said he was looking forward to the incoming U.S. administration to make up for the shortage in construction of settler units during President Barack Obama's term. The construction plan, if approved, would violate a recent UN Security Council resolution which decried Israel's policy of settlement expansion and demanded a halt to such activities. All Israeli settlements are illegal under international law.
The city of Agadez used to rival Timbuktu as a center of commerce and learning. Now it's a revolving door for human traffickers and African migrants trying to reach Europe. But the passage is never easy. Situated in the far-flung northern desert of Niger, it's where the journey becomes untenable for these migrants. They often get stuck and run out of money.
I came here with a friend whose mother in Algeria sent him some money for transport. But we lost most of the money in bribes to policemen on the road. My friend has decided to continue the trip without me, and my family say they're not able to provide me any help.
My parents are farmers who couldn't continue to pay for my education, and when I failed to find a job in Bamako, I decided to go to Europe, not to do any harm there, but just to work and live in peace. I may not fare better than those who died en route, as I may not fare worse than those who survived.
But Nasser and Sissoko are perhaps luckier than thousands who, after having reached Libya and Algeria, draining their energy and funds, were then forced to return to Agadez, a journey of more than 2,000 kilometers. For several months now, Algeria has been sending hundreds of migrants back to Niger, according to Human Rights Watch. Some of them say they went through extreme phases of suffering on the road due to exhaustion and malnutrition.
What the Algerians did to us, I can't even talk about it. It's beyond explanation. The Algerians mistreated us. They beat people. People died. 2 people died, and they took our goods and money.
Migrants are hosted in basic shelters before they're sent to their respective countries of origin.
We conducted a census and received over 500 migrants who were kicked out from Algeria. Amongst them were 11 women and 19 children. We have welcomed them, offered shelter and food.
Niger is a part of a multinational program sponsored by the EU, aimed at curbing African migration to Western Europe. Earlier this month, the EU offered €638 million to Niger to help deal with the rising tide of immigrants crossing the country. But as instability and drought continue to afflict the Sahel region, thousands of youths continue to brave the odds in search of a better life. Mohammed Vaid, Al Jazeera.
It was 2 months ago when the Indian government demonetized high-value currency as part of efforts to fight corruption. The move, however, has badly affected migrant workers as their income depends on cash transactions. Press TV's Manor Zaman tells us more from New Delhi.
It's a daybreak in India's capital, New Delhi, where thousands of migrant workers have to wait for long hours to make a living. Banu Lal, a migrant laborer from Uttar Pradesh, has been waiting since 8 in the morning, but there is no one to take him for work, he says. The situation is same for other workers following a government decision to ban certain high-value currency notes. Although experts believe the currency ban could be a landmark decision, but it is regarded as a huge blow for migrant workers, as their daily income depends on cash transactions. The government decided to demonetize high-value currency in early November. Authorities say the move helps root out corruption. Critics, however, say it's a faulty implementation process, which will result in a reverse mass migration. Migrant workers have shown different reaction.
The Prime Minister assured that everything will be normal in 15 days, but we are not sure how long it will take. Each day is becoming more difficult for us. There is no work. I think it's a short-term suffering, but it will secure our country's future. Rich people are holding enormous money, and the country is facing corruption epidemic. I think I can live with it only if it does not last longer.
Sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing and retail, which are largely dependent on cash dealings, are facing major crunch. Outside the banks across the country, people have to line up for cash, while money laundering has raised fears of long-term consequences. Despite widespread criticism, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has defended his government's decision to demonetize high-value currency and pledged to continue fight against corruption. Munawar Zaman, Press TV, New Delhi.
At first glance, it appears like a forgotten part of Italy, but for decades the community in Idroscalo has survived against the odds. Sprung out of necessity, the residents made their lives here, building homes without permits, because, they say, it's all they could afford to do. People like Franca Vanini, a grandmother who supports her family in the home she and her husband built. For years they struggled to get by, her and her daughter often working up to several jobs at a time, yet they have never been able to escape the poverty trap and the stigma that accompanies it.
Many of the people who live here judge us really badly. They've called us so many names: ugly, dirty, bad, criminals, mafia members. They even call us liars.
Moreover, the authorities have barely done a thing to support those living here.
Not a day goes by when we're not fighting for our community. We struggle over issues like the sewage, the garbage disposal and our streets. What's a basic right for any citizen in Rome has become a real struggle for us.
It It may only be 50 kilometers outside of Rome, but Idroscalo may as well be completely off the radar. The local authorities barely do anything here, including fixing the main road into the community, which floods regularly and leaves children unable to go to school. More than 4.5 million people in Italy are so affected by deprivation that they face social exclusion. That's the highest rate in 10 years. The National Statistics Office said that 1 in 4 people is now at risk of poverty.
In Italy, we lost a lot of jobs, unemployment and also working poor, people who have a job but the salary is very low and not enough to maintain and to live with for their families.
And in the country's shops and markets, the hardship is being keenly felt.
For the past 4 years we've been feeling the crisis, and it's getting worse every year because sadly people don't have money. Work here dries up, it's emptier, and then fewer people come.
All my money goes on bills and my rent, and I have a child, so all that remains goes to her.
Italy's stagnant economy has worsened its situation. Its debt levels are second only to Greece within the Eurozone, and inequality is growing. For Italians who are struggling to get by, politicians will have to do more than promise change. They will need to act on it. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera, Rome.